Hello, my name's Ralph and welcome back to the channel today. It's my time, let's go. Glad to see you all back, and if you got time, hit the subscribe button, helps our channel to grow. Don't be afraid to leave some comments in the comments section because I always love to hear from people. Today we're going to finish up this fat tire bike that we've taken care of the other issues and the electrical stuff. Now we're just going to change the oil in it. We also got to clean up the brake now. We've got to bleed the brake and do all that, so we're going to show you how we do that. To start with, one thing about these bikes is trying to trace back who's had what in them. And that is awfully often a question. He was able to contact the previous owner who I'd done some work on it before and found out that it was Sin 3 that was in the bike. So that's a good thing. We don't be mixing oil, synthetic or the regular petroleum oils. People often ask me which one you should use. I don't know, there's a bazillion opinions out there on the internet. I am a believer that if you're working with one sort of oil, that you should keep using that oil and not swap back and forth. The things in your components in your engine and the rings especially break in with a certain kind of oil. If you change it to something with synthetics that they're more slippery or whatever, that can lead to problems down the road with your ring seating and things like that. So I always try to make the extra effort to find out what was in it if there's any possible way. We've gone along and decided to change the oil in this, and we've opted to take this here and take it off of the feed of the pump here. And as you can see, we have the oil line draining down. The problem with that is that where the drain plug is on the oil tank, it doesn't get down into the front of the oil tank. As you can see here, the oil tank has quite a dip down in it here. This is the drain plug here. And again, the curvature of the oil tank doesn't lend itself very well to getting the oil that's trapped down in the front of the tank. So that's why we've opted to do it this way. We've got to get the oil filter off of it here. And what we've decided to do is take the oil filter off, replace it with a new one. And because gas has evidently gone through the system, we're going to drain the oil on there. Somebody has torqued that on. Oh, the whole bracket's loose. You see that move? Just put a little drip of oil around there, and we're just gonna she's the wrong size unit. Yeah. Okay, we'll have to look into that, won't we? Although I can drain it right straight out of there, which we may very well do. I'll just put a pail or a bucket or a container underneath of this and let it come straight out of there, and we won't have to use this because of the direction of this. But this would have normally screwed right on there and allowed the oil to come out here. But it's the wrong size for that oddball one. These can actually be on the early 4 speeds, 82 to 86, and some of the FXSTs, Sportsters 1980 to 84, also use this little short one here, so that has a different thread there. So now we've got it all drained out of there, it seems. I'm not seeing any real gasoline in that, which is a good thing. It makes me know that it didn't completely wash the cylinders down and fill the engine case up with gasoline, or else we'd be seeing the marks on it for sure. But it looks pretty good. As I showed you, I took the oil line off of this one to drain the oil out because I wanted to make sure to get everything out of the oil tank. And where the drain plug was on it, it's all cool and everything, but not a good place to drain the oil out of a tank like that. We're going to start by putting some oil in it. I've drained it out, so we're going to get things topped off and we'll get back to you. So what we're going to do is fire the bike up. I'm going to put 3 quarts of oil in it. I'm not sure what that oil tank holds, but it should hold 3. And we're going to start the motor up. once we've got the bike running, you're going to see oil come out of here, out of the bottom of the oil filter bracket, and it should come right at this hole and go right into our bucket. And what I'm going to do is run it so that I hopefully, without having to go too long and put too much through it, until we get some sort of clean oil out of there. Then I know that the tank has been flushed out. Even though the gas didn't seem to be in the oil, yeah, it's hard to say, and the oil was pretty cruddy, so let's give her a good chance at life and let's flush this thing out. All right, so we'll get at it. All right, so now we've cleaned that out and we've run some through there and we're starting to see the nice clean oil in that, and that's what I was looking for. So we're gonna get our filter done up here. I like to keep it about 3/4 full, and that's so there's not a big air pocket when you go to pump the oil into it. All right, now when we went to loosen this, I noticed that when I went to try and get it off, it actually moved this way. So I think what we're gonna do is loosen up the motor mounts and then retighten them, get this thing where it's supposed to be here. Wow, they're super loose. Not tight at all. There we go. So we've found that the rear motor mounts are loose as well as the front ones. I've got a little wrench that's kind of shaped like that, and sometimes it's, you know, it's hard to get at this bolt in the back. Now I'm certainly not going to be able to get it torqued the way I'd like to get it torqued, as you can't get at it from underneath. Yeah, it's pretty loose in there. Alright, well, we just have to get that little bugger out of there. There we go. And that's got that tightened up. Check this motor mount. Oh yeah. Okay. He was also saying he had a bit of a rattle up in the front end, so we're sort of looking for things, and lo and behold, look at that. That's about to fall off. So you can see by looking around on your bike at the different things here, I'm just kind of breezing over it. The motor mounts are loose, front fender's loose, a bunch of other stuff loose, the locks for the swing arm are loose. I'm going to kind of go over it and try to find what I can find and see if we can get things straightened out, because you know, things do vibrate loose on the bike, but every once in a while they need some upkeep. So we're going to try to go around and pick out some of the obvious things and get them right. All right, we'll get at it. So if we're looking down in here, you can see how this brake line was routed right over the chain, and then when you lower the bike, it'll come down even more, and the chain has chewed right completely through the brake line right there. So what we're going to have to do is route it up over and around and try to eliminate that problem with a couple different fittings and stuff. That's just a bad way to design something there, and I don't know why somebody did that. But such is the way it is. Looks cool when it's parked, not too cool when it's sheared your brake line off. So we're going to try to get in here and get the brake line off. We can see if we have a brake line close to that length. Actually, we don't want it that length. We need it a different length. Go. The whole brake running loose like that. Seems like the whole rear caliper is just floating in there. So we got a couple different length lines that we're trying here, and there are a few other factors that I'm not being too happy about when I see it here. The rear brake caliper here, which is also part of the sprocket assembly on the right-hand drive, should be mounted, but there's how it's mounted. The bolt has stripped and come out of the mounting, or someone just decided to leave it out, and it just barely, I'm talking like maybe 1/8 of an inch that it's resting down below on here. In here, there's a hole right there, and this brake should have a mounting screw in it and locking that brake into that hole, which in turn also brings this caliper up where the brake line hooks on. But those are things that, you know, because the screw was gone, that went down. Because that went down, now the brake line is pointed down at the chain. So one thing leads to another, and if you don't fix the one thing, it'll create more problems down the road. So because of this thing flip-flopping around all over the place here, I'm going to get a bolt to start with and mount that where it should be, and then I can see where to route my brake lines. As I said, obviously one problem leads to another, and you've got to be on top of your bike. You've got to keep an eye on your brakes. You've got to keep an eye on the upkeep of things, that things are tight. That could have very well been disastrous, and fortunately it wasn't, and it's caught in time. So we're going to go along and try to fix that. So what we're going to try to do now is get an Allen bolt that's long enough to get a bite through the caliper body itself. You have to make sure that it doesn't just go in there with a couple of threads. Oh yeah, okay, we're 3/4 of the way through, more than 3/4 of the way through. And the other thing is that there's a space between the brake caliper and the mount itself. We know that by putting a couple of washers in there, it comes pretty close, but we can't pull it over this way. We can't force the body over this way to make up the difference of it. So I've got some caliper spacing washers here of different sizes. And they're just like little shims of different thicknesses. So we know that these two will go in fine. So what I'm going to try to do, okay, let's try this. Let's try it's 10,000ths of an inch. Actually, this is what we did have, so it was quite thick. That's 50,000ths of an inch. So I think if I had something that was 20, here's 120. And that one's 20,000ths of an inch. So what I'm going to do is tighten this up, and then we need to just raise the back end of the bike up. Just got to raise the bike up. Get the back wheel off of the ground. Just a slight little drag. I don't know if I'd be lucky enough to find a 30. I do have a 10 there that I could put in. It's 50. There's a 30 there. So what we're going to do is take that one out, put a 30 thou one in there. So as I say, you don't want to be pulling the brake this way on the caliper. We want it to ride right in the center. We want to be able to tighten it up with no excess drag at all. I don't even want to feel any resistance. Thinking if I could get another 10 thou in there. What's this one? That one's 42 and 30 there. So let's take that 30 out. That's feeling like what we want there now. Sometimes it doesn't sound like much, 10,000ths of an inch. You know, when they say an inch is 1,000th of a human hair. 10 human hairs is the difference in there. We do have some play in the caliper there though, so I think what I'll do is I'm going to take another 10,000ths of an inch spacer, and for my own curiosity's sake, well, it's 12,000ths actually is what I have there. $12,000s. 10 thou there, so that one's 10,000ths of an inch. I'm thinking that might be better. Because when I tighten it up and put pressure on it, the 10,000ths of an inch crush out a little bit. I can actually see it right here, wanting to move the free play. That actually just pulled it a little bit tight. So now we know. Give or take 0.10 of an inch. That's what we're looking for. And the pistons will move back and forth inside. That's about what we're gonna go for there. So what we're looking at here, you know, yes, is a brake line sheared off. That could have been very dangerous. Customer could have crashed his bike because of that. So what we're gonna do is put a longer one on it, and we're gonna make sure that it has room for the bike to come up and down and lower with no interference anywhere near that chain. So if you have a custom bike, it's up to you to look it over. Check these kind of things, where your brake line's routed, those kind of things, to make sure that it is safe and that it's just not something that's been tucked away and made to look cool to get it out of sight. It's out of sight, out of mind, and you don't know what's happening with it. So we're gonna go along and get a longer brake line and see if we've got one in stock. I'm not sure, but we may have. And I'm gonna try to route it somewhere that I'm sure that chain is not gonna interfere with it at all. All right, let's get at it. And we're gonna tie wrap some of these things off. And we'll go one more, just for good measure. So we're gonna take a little bit of this automotive wrap, and I know that the stainless looks nicer, but a little bit of protection in this area is gonna be well worth it. It's also, if something hits or rubs, it will become blatantly obvious on this, and then the customer can get in the habit of glancing at it once in a while and saying, does that look like it's wearing? Or we've got these little tiny small tie wraps that we're just going to put around it to hold it in place. I like things to be clean, and I like the looks of the braided stainless steel lines where applicable, but at no time do I want to sacrifice any kind of safety for looks. This is just an extra coating, and like I say, the customer, it'll become blatantly obvious if anything at any time touches. The first thing to go will be that plastic wrap, and you'll see it shredding before you ever get to the brake line. Just another thing that takes a moment, but an ounce of prevention, they say. So there we are. It's nice, it's neat, it's clean. There's no chance that anything's going to rub in there. And by putting this little bit of coating on it, like I say, first sign of anything touching anywhere will be obvious on that black coating. And all in all, it looks good in there. It doesn't really detract from the looks. It's tucked away inside. It'll be just fine. Now we need to bleed the brakes. So we're trying to bleed the brakes, and we're not quite sure what was in it for fluid. The master cylinder had gone dry, and everything else. I put a mirror under the master cylinder when I got it out and pumped it. It seemed to have a yellowish colored fluid, but it's lead me to believe that it's .4. I've hung the brake line down here, and we've got some drips on it. And I know that they're hard to see, but they're not blue, they're not purple. They're quite yellow. So I would say we're probably good with .4. Highly, highly unlikely that there was .3 in it. Nobody would be using .3 anymore, and they wouldn't be using it on this sort of bike, I wouldn't think. Looking at that, we gotta figure we got .4 in it. I got no choice but to try and see. So we're just gonna pump a little through the master cylinder first, and I've pumped it out, and it all came out sort of yellowish brown. more like .4, not .5. So we're going to pump a bit through it, kind of bleed the master cylinder there before we go any farther. And then we'll try to see if we can pump some through it. We may have to get our vacuum out and try it, but I'm going to try it the old-fashioned way and try to pump some through it and just see what happens here. So stick with us and let's go. I'm going to hook the brake line back up and we'll go put some fluid in it. So we'll open up a fresh can at .4 here. We'll hold our finger over the hole. It sort of helps create a vacuum to try and suck some down in there. I'm watching the bubbles come up. I know that it's bleeding out the master cylinder area, filling up the piston. Go, hard pedal. Now our master cylinder has got fluid all up into the piston area now. Making sure that it's building up pressure there itself. And I got fluid coming right out the other end. We're going to hook that back up as well. Getting all the air out, which there's a lot. We've got big lines full of air, so it's likely going to take a while. Go, we're coming up now. Trying to get all the fluid we can, the old stuff out of there. The way she should be. Takes care of that. Now we'll head back over to the back end of the bike because we got some other problems happening there. So that's about tidying things up on this fat tire bike for this week. We're glad we got all the little issues tied up and we found a bunch of other small things that he didn't know about. So that's great and I'm sure he'll be happy with it. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell, do those things. It helps our channel to grow and we appreciate it very much. I don't just say that every time, I appreciate it very much. So check out our other videos and come back and share it with others and let us know.